Hi, my name's Steve Killelea and I'm the Chairman and Founder of the Institute for Economics and Peace.
Firstly, can you tell us about yourself and your journey?
Well, actually, I accidentally got involved in peace. My background's in business. I set up 2 international IT companies, first end up publicly listed on NASDAQ, second on the Australian Stock Exchange. So I made a fair amount of money from that, set up a family foundation to work with the poorest of the poor. So that took me into a lot of war zones, near post-war zones. And then it would have been about 16 years ago, I was walking through northeast Kivu in the Congo, which is one of the more violent places in the world. And I started to think, what are the most peaceful nations in the world? And it was a bit of a fantasy question to see if there was anything I could bring back into the projects I was doing. Got home, searched the internet, and couldn't find a list of the countries of the world by their peacefulness. And that's how the Global Peace Index was born. But that creates a profound question. Because if a simple businessman, like myself, can be walking through Africa and wonder what are the most peaceful nations in the world, and it hasn't been done, then how much do we know about peace? If you can't measure something, can you truly understand it? If you can't measure it, how do you even know whether your actions are helping you or hindering you in achieving your goals? Most of the time when we think we're studying peace, we're actually studying conflict. But the study of peace is really quite different than the study of conflict. And so an analogy is probably the best way to get this across. So if we think of medicine, for example, and we think of the great breakthroughs through studying pathology. None of us are going to die of a heart attack young. We're even curing cancers. But it wasn't until we studied healthy people that we learned what it took to stay healthy. Right diet, correct mental disposition, plenty of exercise. You're not going to learn anything of those things through studying someone on their deathbed. And it's the same thing for peace. If we want to understand how societies can remain peaceful, remain resilient, particularly when they get shocks, we study the healthy societies, the ones which are most peaceful.
So the person who's never heard of it before, tell us about the Global Peace Index and what it does.
So the Global Peace Index measures the state of peace of 99.7% of the world's population. It's got 3 different domains which it uses. The first is the internal safety and security of the society. The next is its level of militarisation. The next is involvement in conflict. And these 3 domains come together and consist of 23 indicators to create the Global Peace Index. It does give you the ability now to look at the state of peace globally and to look how it changes over time.
I mean, why is it important that we come together as one, and that we understand we all have a role to play in creating a more peaceful and sustainable world?
I think one of the things of the modern age, and this is very different than my father's era, is that we all now we're interconnected. We're all dependent on each other. This is no more telling than when we look at climate change and many of the other ecological threats which are facing the planet. We're all interconnected together. And therefore, I think the 21st of September, on the Day of Peace, it really brings home to us that we're all interdependent, we're all here together. And peace is not something which is created by some people sitting in the UN down in New York. It's created by me and you. It's created by all of us. And it comes down to just the most simple of acts. When you go and buy something from a shop, smile at the attendant. Ask them something personal. Be friendly. When you get a little bit of angry emotions, sit on it just for a few minutes before responding. Understanding how to really understand what the other person are doing for you. Too often we're thinking of ourselves and not seeing the small nicenesses which others, particularly our family even, can be doing for us.
Could you tell us about your new book, please? Peace in the Age of Chaos.
Well, after all my experience at IEP, I realised I really should write down the work which we've done. The reason for that is what I think we've found is something which is transformational. If If you look at the Western societies at the moment, in many ways, they're in what you could call slight decay. We can find that commitments to democracy are decreasing, group grievances are on the rise, many levels of measures of inequality are increasing. And we can see that the elites are fighting more amongst themselves as well. That can be seen, let's say, through the last election in the US, President Trump. We can also see it in the UK, let's say, through the Brit exit and what happened there. So what we've found through the study, the work we've done, is we understand clearly now what it takes to create a highly peaceful society. But not only that, what creates a highly peaceful society also creates the kind of conditions which many of us want to see in societies overall. Better economic growth, better measures of inclusion, better performance on the ecology. Therefore, this concept, positive peace, describes an optimal environment in which human potential can flourish. And that's what the book's about. Explains out clearly how you can create a highly peaceful society, but also a society which functions on many other levels, the things which we think are important.
Why have you always supported Peace Day?
Well, Peace Day is an important day, and Jeremy, the work you do through Peace One Day, I just think is excellent. The idea of everyone thinking about peace on a particular day, I think is really important for the overall human consciousness. There are many different days which are celebrated through the year, but the peace is, I think, the major freedom which people want. If you haven't got peace, if you're bound in conflict, how can you ever get any of the other things in life you wish to achieve?
Well, since you've mentioned that, actually, peace is pretty fundamental to, humanity's survival. I mean, I look at the Sustainable Development Goals. I look at those 17 goals, and obviously there's one goal that stands out to me, which is goal 16, right? Peace and justice. And I think to myself, and I wonder if you think sometimes the same, if we don't concentrate on getting goal 16 right, I'm really not quite sure how we can relieve poverty and educate children and all the wonderful goals that they have. So is goal 16 pretty fundamental to you in terms of our success?
When we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it's a great leap forward. But there are 17 different goals, 169 targets. But the goal which is pivotal is goal 16, which is the peace, and justice goal. Because without peace, without justice, it's almost impossible for the other goals to succeed.
I completely agree with you. Why is it important now for all of us to protect people, to protect planet and to protect wildlife?
So we look at today, there are a number of ecological threats which are overwhelming different parts of the world. And these have come about because of a combination of a whole lot of things. The weak governance within countries, conflict, overpopulation, the degradation of water and particularly food. And these things will only be exacerbated by climate change. In fact, it's going to get much, much worse. So we need to focus on these ecological threats today to be able to make the societies resilient. The more resilient a society is, the more likely it is to be able to withstand the shocks of climate change. There are three areas which are particularly affected. The first is the Horn of Africa and Sahel. In fact, many of the largest growing terrorist organisations, which are Islamic in nature, are in that region. The second region is Southern Africa. The third region stretches from Syria over to Pakistan. And we all know the history of those areas as well. In fact, if we went back to 2019 and looked at the two countries with the most conflicts over water, they were Syria and Iraq. And what that tells is a story, which is a terrible story. That's basically that when the resources get depleted, that creates conflict. The conflict then further depletes the resources. So you're in this vicious cycle. And climate change will just massively exaggerate all of that.
So the phrase no climate action, no peace makes sense to you then?
Yeah, definitely does. Definitely does.
Well, Steve, listen, thanks ever so much. You've been a complete inspiration to me for about, I don't know how long ago was it met. It's probably about 15, 16 years ago that we met. The work that you do is absolutely incredible. Thanks so much for talking to us today, Steve.
Yeah, keep your good work up. and wish you the best.